I want to discuss what's going on around the United States right now with cannabis legislation regarding our Second Amendment. In the United States, you have a right to your Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Up until this new medicinal cannabis legislation that has decriminalized and legalized cannabis in different states, it has been specifically criminals that have had to deal with the consequences of losing their right to their Second Amendment. Now, those criminals are individuals who were charged with being in possession of a Schedule I substance. In the United States, whenever you have been proven to be in possession of a Schedule I substance, you forego your right to bear arms. Once you commit certain crimes, you forego your rights to certain elements of protection here in the United States. I want to discuss the fact that states are issuing medicinal cannabis cards and passing medicinal cannabis legislation, even recreational cannabis legislation, legalizing it totally. We have to look at the FDA and the DEA and how they work together. The FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. They are in charge of stipulating through research whether or not different substances are medicinally viable and whether they cause physical dependence. And they pass this information on to other institutions like the DEA. The DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, is in charge of scheduling substances into separate categories. For example, Schedule I substances are substances that have no medicinal viability. There's no therapeutic applications found in these substances. They have a high tendency for abuse and dependency. So we're going to define dependency because it's very important, because it's a major aspect of what we're going to discuss here. Dependency is a change in your overall homeostatic state. That is how it's defined according to these other substances that are grouped into Schedule I category. You look at heroin, methamphetamine. These things cause a change in your overall long-term homeostatic state. Cannabis does not do that. Cannabis does not do that. So the DEA stipulates that cannabis is a Schedule I substance because the FDA says it is not medicinal, it has no therapeutic value medicinally, and that it causes dependency and it has a hii tendency for abuse. Because of this, whenever you obtain your medicinal cannabis card, you are signing a contract saying that you are going to become someone who is in possession of a Schedule I substance in the United States. At that point, because of federal legislation and the fact that for some reason the states are adhering to this part of the federal legislation while foregoing the fact that they're saying that it is medicinal. They're issuing you a medical cannabis card and saying that you are going to become someone who is in possession of a Schedule I substance in the United States. At that point, because of federal legislation and the fact that for some reason the states are adhering to this part of the federal legislation while foregoing the fact that they're saying that it is medicinal. They're issuing you a medical cannabis card. Because you're in possession of a Schedule I substance, something that is not medicinal, you have to forego your Second Amendment. This makes absolutely no sense. There's a few states that have gone about changing this legislation and rewording things so that those who are in possession of their medicinal cannabis card, people who may be going through end-of-life therapy, people who may be recovering from cancer treatments, people suffering from depression symptoms, people suffering from different psychological disorders, people suffering from epileptic seizures, people suffering from all sorts of different disorders that use medicinal cannabis. It's not just stoners who want to get cannabis, don't want to buy it on the street and go to the doctor and make up some, my wrist hurts. Cannabis is extremely medicinally therapeutically viable for PTSD, literally has been shown to cure cancer. The fact that the FDA says that cannabis has no therapeutic value is absolutely mind-blowing when you consider the fact that from 2000 to 2020, the FDA and DEA worked hand in hand to prevent Dr. Lyle Craker and colleagues from obtaining the ability to study cannabis outside of the cannabis that the FDA had contracted growers at the University of Mississippi to grow for research purposes. Now, Dr. Lyle Craker and colleagues wanted to study the cannabis that was being grown and sold on the medicinal and recreational markets in the United States. For good reason. At the time, in the 2000 era, California was supplying up to 75% of the United States illicit cannabis market, up to 25% of the world's illicit cannabis market. This was with seed to sale in place, which was supposed to track the cannabis so that it minimized diversion at least. So this was minimized diversion of medicinal cannabis out of California. So there was good reason to study the cannabis. The FDA and the DEA would not even respond to Dr. Lyle Craker and colleagues as to how long it would take them to respond to them regarding research of this cannabis. Meanwhile, during that 20-year stretch, meanwhile, in 2008, we had the Stanley brothers in Colorado. In 2008, Colorado was still a gray area, so this cannabis that I'm about to discuss was grown illicitly initially. The Stanley brothers developed a strain of specifically medicinally viable cannabis known as Charlotte's Web. Yes, I changed outfits. Magical, aren't I? The Charlotte's Web cannabis was grown on the illicit cannabis market. So while Colorado was medicinally decriminalized as of the year 2000, they were not recreationally legalized, so fully legal with cannabis until the year 2012. So in 2008, when the Stanley brothers developed the strain which the FDA rode the coattails of to the production of Epidiolex, this was an illicitly produced strain. Might not matter to some people, but to me, it rings very true to the fact that the FDA manipulates the entire situation around cannabis. They manipulate cannabis research and cannabis legislation to accept what they want to and deny what they don't.